Welcome to the BizGrowMojo podcast, the podcast where we get into real talk about business ownership, growth, marketing, learning lessons, and advice with real business owners. Here's your host, Ryan Amon. Now, let's get down to business.
I'm pumped to get this rolling. Let's go. From clothing designer to business lawyer. In this episode, we talked to business attorney Kim Reeves. Kim had her own clothing design business and an MBA before realizing that law was a substantial missing piece for her that can be the cause of many businesses' success or failure. So she went back to school to become an attorney. Now she helps other business owners with the legal challenges they face in their businesses. We talk about some of these challenges she runs into, what marketing has worked for her, use of AI in law, and much more. Let's dive in. Thanks, Kim, for coming on to the podcast. I really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm looking forward to getting into the weeds with you here. Let's just start by, if you can tell us a little bit about who you are and what your business does.
Yeah, so my name is Kim Reeves, and I am an attorney out of Idaho Falls, Idaho. I have a master's of business administration from my life prior to law school. And so I, as an attorney, basically focus my practice on helping people set up businesses, advises kind of a general counsel, especially for small to mid-sized businesses that don't have their own in-house counsel. So, and one of the things that my clients love is that I'm able to bring my business background with marketing and entrepreneurship emphasis during my MBA and business consulting days. To kind of give a holistic, like, hey, here's the legal, but here's also some help in growing and practical advice on getting a businesses up and going and avoiding some of the really common pitfalls that end up hampering businesses years down the line, or if you end up in a lawsuit, what are those things that are going to hurt you that you could have, avoided if you'd set up a better process in the first place.
Yeah, I bet that background is really helpful for the particular field of law that you're in. That's awesome. So what kind of inspired you to get into the legal industry?
So I actually started out my career as I'm a clothing designer. I've been sewing and designing clothing since I was 3 years old. Awesome. And hit somewhere 21, 22, decided I needed to turn it from a side something I did to a real business. So I actually went to college and got a history degree. And that's not very lucrative. It actually came back and turned out being really useful when I went to law school. But so I went back, got a master's of business to kind of help me learn, what am I missing? How do I turn this thing that I know, like I have the skill set to do this piece, but how do I turn it from, a shop in my house to something bigger? And so that was the first step. And then when I was working on my MBA, I was just really struck that it was like all of these pieces, it's like this giant jigsaw puzzle, and you have marketing over here, and you have compliance, and you have sustainability and HR and all these pieces that they teach you in business school. And I was like, I feel like there's something missing. Like, it's like this giant puzzle, but what's connecting them all? And then, I laugh that, one day I woke up and decided to go to law school, which isn't super far from the truth. It wasn't something that I had really considered long-term or had been planning on, but kind of came up. My husband and I were going through some medical issues and life changes and having that reevaluation of what we wanted to be doing with our lives. And he says, how about law school? And I was like, no, I don't want to be an attorney. Are you crazy? But then the more I thought about it, I was like, actually, that sounds really interesting. So I did the things you do to get ready for law school, took the tests, actually did better than I thought I would. So I was like, oh, maybe this is a good fit. And it was super fun because then getting into law school, I was a little bit older. And from my perspective, that puzzle thing in my head where I'm like, I've got all these pieces, but there's got to be more, kind of pulling them together. And I realized it's the law. The law is the thing that's kind of connecting all these pieces. It's kind of the glue between the pieces. And then there's more pieces now. There's also, like in my practice now, I do succession planning, and helping people who have businesses pass them on to the next generation, which is never something we talked about in business school.
Yeah.
But that's where I see most businesses fight or fail or things like that, is when they lose a founding member, or when you have, a spouse or children come in and take ownership that then have a different vision. And so that's one little piece, that I kind of added there. So yeah, I love it, actually. I love being an attorney. I love working with businesses. I absolutely hate being in the courtroom, so I do not practice litigation really at all. I will assist my partners in their litigation cases when we're dealing with business related cases and things, kind of, again, as consulting as well, the code sections, and this is practice, and this is, how we do this. But so I play enough to help advise people how not to get there, but I try to avoid being in a courtroom as much as possible.
That's understandable. Yeah, that's amazing that you went back and did that. I've actually kind of thought about doing that before too. I've worked with a lot of law firms over the years, and there's been times where I've thought I should have just went into law, but
Yeah, like
what's always stopped me is
I
like,
can
I'm
do
already
this.
too far down this path. I can't start over at this point.
It's funny that you say that. So I went back. I was in my early 30s when I went back. But in my class, there was he was probably somewhere in his 50s, and he a Catholic priest that had left.
Oh wow, that's quite a
and and a lady too in my class who was probably in her late 50s, early 60s, that was coming out of insurance, and she was like looking at the regulatory environment at the time, saying, "I'm not going to have a job here, and I'm not ready to retire." So she went to law school, and there was a handful of us that were not your quintessential 25 to 28-year-old, post
really
undergrad.
cool.
So it was fun, and my understanding is every year, there's always a handful of people that are like, "Screw it, I'm going back and following another path, following another love."
That's a big challenge to just tackle and go back to. If it was just a couple of years of school or something, it'd be another thing. But it's law, so
yeah. Well, it's
quite
3
a challenge
years.
to tackle.
Yeah, it's 3 years full time, and so it's a lot, right? Like, I don't want to just make it sound, oh yeah, just decide to go tomorrow. It takes prep and planning and finance. You have to get your finances in order or have a plan. So yeah, it's definitely a big change. There are some online options now, which has actually been one of those silver linings of COVID.
Oh yeah, that helps a little bit.
Is there are now a handful of online and part-time, even online part-time, ABA accredited law schools, which that's always one of the hangups, is that to sit for the bar exam, you have to go to an ABA accredited school in most states. So having an online option is, I think, fantastic. I hope that doesn't go away here as we're kind of dealing with the leveling out of the remote learning and remote work.
I think the cat's out of the bag now.
I hope that those don't go away. Yeah.
So how long have you been practicing law now? And what were some of the early kind of wins that really got it going?
Okay. So I've been an attorney 8 years now. Early wins. I mean, like I said, I was coming with a lot of business experience. So I kind of was in a lot of ways able to kind of step right in and help in those areas. I actually ended up, funny thing, with an eviction. I was probably my second year out of law school, and I was dealing with a breach of contract case for a client. Again, dealing with an employment contract that they wrote themselves, which is one of my big top 10. Penny wise, pound foolish. Do not try to write your own employment contracts yourself, right? So was dealing with this breach of contract, but this client of mine and this employee of his had like commingled a little bit more than just business, and the employee was renting a house from my client, and because the relationship had soured, my client wanted to move on from that relationship as well, because they were next door neighbors. So there was no written lease, so we gave them like 6 months, no rent as part of this, like, sorry, we're letting you go kind of thing, but hey, we want you out. Well, they'd hired an attorney to assist them with the contracts. Well, they're actually the ones that sued my client. So they had an attorney that was doing the breach of contract. So they decided to not leave, and we had to evict them. And they still decided not to leave. And because there was no written lease, which is, one of those top 10 too, always have a contract, always have a lease. We ended up in a long-term eviction proceeding, not one of those quick couple week ones. And they fought it all the way to a jury trial.
Oh,
So
wow.
here I am in my second, third year out of law school. And we always joke about the fact that very few attorneys actually get to go to a full jury trial. And here I am, full jury trial on an eviction case that they really had no grounds to stay in the house. And it was one of those things where it was really ugly. And my clients were very patient and fantastic. So I'm sitting here going, I barely know what I'm doing. The best part for us is that the law was on our side, right? And the facts, didn't contravene that. So that was huge in terms of, one, learning, I don't really love the courtroom environment, but again, seeing how an unwillingness to settle and compromise pushes you to this thing where, a jury trial, it probably cost my clients $30,000. And that's mostly just that backside of that with the discovery and the actual trial prep and trial itself. And if that's how much it cost us, that's how much it cost them. And at the end of the day, we won. They had to leave, but because of the circumstances, the judge decided not to award attorney fees to either side. So, my clients were happy that they were able to move on from there. But at the end of the day, it was like so expensive.
That's an expensive savings on that contract that they could have had written by somebody that knew what they were doing.
Right. Yeah. And so that's where, again, really that lesson, always have your agreements in writing, have an attorney do it, especially that employment contract had a really funky, the whole core of the fight was a bonus clause that was missing language that as attorneys we would normally put in there, like things like it's a discretionary bonus or something, or it's after expenses. And so there's ambiguities about what were the starting numbers. Was it mandatory? Is it quarterly? Is it annual? Like, how should we be doing this? And that's where they kind of got into a fight over it. But at the end of the day, I tell clients now all the time, when we start looking at, they've been wronged, or they feel like, someone else feels like they've, my clients have wronged them, and we start doing pre-litigation type, headbutting a little bit, demand letters, things like that. I'll say, look, you're not going to jail. We're not talking about criminal anything. Okay. This is business. So you got to take your emotion out of it. Ignore sunk costs, right? That's, something that's hard for people that we learn about in business school, is kind of avoiding that sunk cost fallacy of thinking, well, I've invested so much, I got to keep going. And we say, hey, look, this is how much this will cost you. And on top of how much it's going to cost you, let me explain to you that the litigation process takes years, and it is emotionally trying, especially if you're a small business owner. You're living, you're breathing, you're eating your business. This is not something that you can pass off to a legal staff and just get checkups once or twice, once a month kind of thing, and have it not affect you. Like, if you're that big of a corporation, you have your own in-house counsel. You're not dealing with me. So, and we talk about, what is your peace worth? Your ability to sleep. Like, maybe it's a nasty pill to swallow, writing a settlement check, but in the long run, that's the cheaper option.
What's the lesser of two evils?
Right. And that's where I say, don't make this an emotional decision. Don't make this about right or wrong. You've got to take a practical approach and say, what is best for my business? What is best for me? And sometimes the answer is, we're going to fight it, and sometimes the answer is, I just want this to go away. And so that was a big lesson for me. I think early in that stage, that case I was on, there was a little bit too much of a, well, we're right. Like, and my clients were right. I was right. Like case law, everything, like, yeah, we had the law on our side. We were right on every issue. But at the end of the day, between the two cases, it still ended up costing them tens of thousands of dollars. Took a year and a half.
Expensive mistake to learn from.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, maybe you should have just written them a $30,000 settlement, severance check and called it good. Now, I don't know if they would have accepted it. And that was also part of the tension there, is that there wasn't a lot of effort on both sides to settle for a reasonable number. And so that's where, again, some of my advice is your case probably isn't as good as you think it is. So when I have clients that come in and say, we want $100,000 out of this, and my answer is like, that's really not reasonable. Like,
everybody always thinks they have $1 million.
Yeah. And, we're not dealing with personal injury here with ongoing medical bills. Like, I'm like, do you, are you expecting $100,000 in profit, from this, if this thing hadn't happened? And it's like, well, no. It's like, well, then you're not going to get that. Like, that's not realistic. So,
that makes sense. A lot of people just don't have that realistic mindset when they start seeing dollar signs.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people are really enthusiastic to jump into, a legal process at the beginning. And usually by the time they're 6 months in, they're just like, I hate this. This is expensive. And why are we doing this? I want this to go away. And if they're the ones that started it, it's a lot harder to make it go away. So, again, it's just where I come at it now, where I'm like, what are you good at? Like, if you are good at designing, or if you're good at engineering, if you're good at, you built the service industry business, like, focus your energies there, and let's just get rid of this other issue. And again, when we're setting up businesses, or sometimes people come to me after they've had a bad experience with a disgruntled employee, and they're like, we need documents. And I'm like, yes, you do. Let's, and even just standard ones generally are fine. I mean, it's not like every little business needs, every paragraph customized and everything. Like, we've got pretty standard products now for employee handbooks, independent contractor agreements, employment agreements, lease agreements, commercial and residential. Like, you always want to have these things kind of in order. And I do tell people that, again, that penny wise, pound foolish. Like, you can save $1, maybe trying to do it yourself. Or some of the online resources are decent, but again, if you don't know what you don't know, you might pull this document off the internet and it's not quite right, and it doesn't meet your needs perfectly, and so you might end up with an issue because now there's a gap. I'm going to say it's better than nothing, but at least in my practice, I'm really laid back about, if clients want to bring me a document that they wrote or that they found online and just say, does this work, or can we tweak this? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, I'm not kind of emotional about, well, I didn't draft it, so I'm not going to touch it. I'm like, whatever, whatever works for you. I mean, some people actually enjoy it. They want to kind of try to figure out the contracts and get in there and do the research and try to draft it themselves, and more power to them. But I'd always have an attorney review it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what do you think about, like, utilizing AI to draft contracts? Bad idea?
So, actually, that's a really funny question. So, we have adopted some of the AI tools in our office, especially as transactional attorneys. And I'll be 100% honest with you. I'm really impressed with what they do, and how clear they are. But I have never had an AI draft a contract, or, an initial anything that is what I consider complete. So even though they are pulling from fully complete contracts and things online, for whatever reason, the AIs don't seem to get all the legal clauses in where they need to be. And I can't quite figure out if that's like something that got written in to try to avoid it looking like it's, a fully fleshed out contract or not. But
Interesting.
Again, that kind of that if you want to start with something and then have it reviewed, it's a really interesting new area. We do see just in the last 8 months, I think, since we've been using it, I have seen it start hallucinating more, which is really sad because I'm like, for my use, it's like I use it kind of like I would an assistant, instead of having an assistant do an initial draft and everything, I can use the AI to give me, the initial everything. And I can even drop my documents in and say, hey, use this format and adjust here. And that's better because now my documents have my pieces. And so it doesn't tend to get rid of them. But if I've played around with it and I'm like, draft me this, and it just to see what it spits out at me.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great starting point. I think it's a great learning tool. I actually am pretty impressed with its ability to analyze a contract. And so you can take an existing contract and tell ChatGPT, you can say, analyze this for strengths and weaknesses from this party's perspective. And it's pretty good.
I've done that. And I was pretty impressed. I was like, wow, this is pretty good. But it's just like you don't know what you don't know.
Right. And that's where if you're not an attorney, you can take the analysis and be like, oh, this is, okay, here it's good. You can ask it how it can be better, and it will start kind of getting you there. But again, I'm shocked. The contracts almost never have like a dispute resolution clause, attorney fees clauses, termination clauses. I mean, so again, there's some key things in there that at least in a lot of the contracts I deal with, they are missing. I've never thrown in like a land lease or anything to see how that pops up. But again, that's where the machine, when you're not an attorney, you don't know what pieces should be there.
Yeah.
So when it spits a document out at you that looks pretty good, I'm going to call it like the 80-20 rule. It's probably 80% perfect, but it's missing a few things that
cost you, right?
Yeah, it's missing a few things that 20% might cost you in the back end later on, and maybe not. I tell people all the time, we're under this kind of false notion as people that a contract has to be in writing, and under our laws, at least, it doesn't. A verbal agreement can be a fully enforceable contract in most cases. What we do with the written contracts is we try to remove ambiguity and we try to remove common law elements where we say, okay, here's the traditional elements of a contract and how it's interpreted. So if you just have a verbal agreement, all of those common law from hundreds of years ago, contractual concepts are coming with it. Written contracts, now we get to be specific and say, yes, we have an indemnity clause, we have a warranty clause, we have an attorney fees clause, because in most states, the law is that the parties all bear their own attorney fees. But you can have a contract that says, if I have to sue you because you breached the contract and I win, you have to pay my attorney fees. And if it's in a contract, it's enforceable. If it's not, you don't have it. And so
how do you prove verbal agreements typically?
That's part of that discovery. That's in litigation. That's the discovery process. So that's witness statements. We do depositions in pretrial where all of anybody who we're planning on calling as a witness and in a case, we try at least to get them in and do a deposition in front of a court reporter with the other attorneys where we can ask them questions. That also kind of becomes a tool then that later, if they're testifying, if they say something opposite, we can be like, hey, but wait a minute, you said this, and so at the end of the day, with a verbal contract, I mean, if you go all the way to a trial, it's going to be about whether the judge or jury finds your testimony more believable than the other guys.
Okay.
Because we get to testify of what happened. It can be like, no, this was my understanding, and they can say, well, this was my understanding, and then you start looking for other proof for actions of the parties to try to support your position. But it's hard, right? And that's why we like written contracts, because we can be like, here's the contract.
Written, you can see it. It's easier to prove. Gotcha. That makes sense. I want to back up just a little bit and get like back into your business a little bit. I was curious how, what helped you kind of scale from where you started to where you are now?
So, starting out, well, so I'm with a firm. So I'm not a solo practitioner. So there were some legacy clients and things that when I step in as a new attorney, I'm now working underneath experienced attorneys for a few years, and taking over clients for retiring attorneys. So there's kind of
Okay.
that baseline that at least I was able to walk into. But from there, we do a lot of networking.
Okay.
So for me, I find reaching out to financial advisors, accountants, is kind of my bread and butter for working
Okay.
within the business and succession planning and things like that. Um, we have played around with we're on our third or fourth iteration of a website just since I joined. Just the older attorneys were not quite as into needing to change things as often.
Yeah.
So we've keep trying to update the website, um, getting into social media marketing and stuff like that. And honestly, that's like one of my top 10 advices too is hire professionals.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how to do that. Like even though I come from a business background and have experience with entrepreneurship and e-marketing and stuff like that, my experience is more at like the management level where I know these things exist. I know how they need to get used, but I actually don't know how to do them. I personally don't have much of a social media presence, um, and never really got into that for myself. And so it's kind of like, I'm like, I know we need to have this. Who do we hire
Yeah.
to do this for us? Because I'm not going to be sitting here on my phone on Facebook trying to come up with ad campaigns,
Yeah.
you
Yeah, it
know,
goes back to kinda the
figuring
you
that
don't know
out.
what you don't know thing, it's just it's getting to
Mhm.
be pretty complex, and there's a lot of ins and outs to anything. Have you found any unexpected marketing channels that have performed well that, maybe you didn't think would or anything like that?
I would say I've found more channels that I thought would perform well that really haven't as much for us. Again, law is a little funky because there's regional constraints. Like I am licensed in multiple states, but at the same time, people generally want to come sit down with you. So I'm not trying to market to people in Denver. I'm not trying to market to people in um, Montana. We try to focus our efforts to Eastern Idaho, and
But
Salt Lake area.
if somebody comes to you, will you do business out of the
Oh,
state?
so we have to be careful on how we do that. So if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I want these business documents or things," I can do them. What I can't do is I can't go advertise in other states that I'm not licensed in.
Okay.
I can't show up in another state and represent a client. So I do advising, general advising, um, with contracts. Like I can draft a contract and I can say, hey, this contract is going to be governed by the laws of Texas, but then I disclose I am not a Texas attorney. So you probably should have a Texas attorney review this to make sure that there's not any Texas law specifics that we're missing. So there, like I said, there's some nuance there, and that all actually comes down to our licensing rules, and ethical rules. They're about not practicing in other states.
Mm,
But generally speaking, if people come to me, I can help them.
okay, yeah, that's good to know. Good to know for listeners today. So,
Yeah.
what states can you work in that you can like people can come to you and you can do things for them?
So I personally am licensed in Utah and Idaho. And in my office, we serve Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, and Texas.
Oh, okay, cool. So is networking then kind of the main way that you guys are finding yourself bringing new business in, or is there anything else that seems to be working really effectively?
So our media campaigns seem to do pretty decently, and a lot of that's like just the keyword search, just even in Google. So not even
Search
the
search
Facebook.
engine
So
optimization.
the keyword search and being willing to pay for those keywords has actually been huge.
So like Google
We
Ads.
can see we can see massive returns on investment there. Networking is definitely big in terms of having, I have accountants and financial advisors that send me their clients actually pretty regularly.
Pretty decent referral network and that sort of thing. It seems like a
Mhm.
lot of attorneys will lean pretty heavily on referrals and do pretty well with that.
Yeah, yeah, and I find too. I mean, most people, if you're starting out, if you just have a business idea and you're not already in business, that's that initial hurdle. It's like, who do I go to? Who do I? And that's hard for people. So that's where we see searches bringing in new people. But if you own a business already and you're trying and you're maybe having some issues, usually you have a financial advisor or an accountant. So even if you don't have your own attorney already, um, you can ask your accountant, I need someone who can do this thing. And usually your accountant will know
Yeah.
a handful of attorneys that they like working with that they can refer you to.
Do you find much business coming through LegalZoom? I know that's where we met.
Yes. So my firm has the contract with LegalZoom for Idaho. And so like LegalZoom's one of our clients, and we do the legal consulting calls, and anything that a client needs that's outside of the realm of what LegalZoom can do for them, we can offer, that we can take them on. So LegalZoom is a great service. I actually think their pricing model for the getting those 30-minute attorney calls, I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of small business clients that actually choose to stay with LegalZoom and pay LegalZoom subscription fee just so that they can call a couple times a year instead of paying my hourly rates. And I'm all for it. So
Yeah.
we do get referrals there. So I will have clients that are LegalZoom clients, and we'll do a call and determine, oh, you need this thing. And if it's, again, outside of what LegalZoom does for them, then yeah, I end up drafting contracts and things for that. Or they can pull from LegalZoom's document bank and I can review it. And again, we can kind of go back and forth on, does this really fit your needs? What's missing? LegalZoom can provide them the Word documents that then they can send me, and I can make tweaks there. So it's a great
Yeah.
relationship. We like working with LegalZoom, and
It's got some good tools. I've been
yeah,
using it for sending contracts and having them signed and that sort of thing. And that was for any listeners. That was how me and Kim met. And I've used Kim for some advice and done a few calls, and she's been really helpful as far as business formation questions go. And I wish I would have known that she was there before I actually signed into LegalZoom, because I would have liked to actually talk to somebody directly. Which that's kind of the one thing I feel like is a little bit lacking in LegalZoom, just when you're kind of getting started and going through some of the processes of business formation and stuff. It would be really helpful to have somebody to talk to a little bit more and walk you through some of that, because there were some things I was not understanding
yeah,
100%, that it would have been helpful if we had talked before I started that process.
yeah. That's true with LegalZoom's business formation. They like you to have a consultation with the attorney, but they do it at the end
Yeah,
after your documents have
it
been
would have.
submitted.
I
So
think it would
that
have been
might
better
be
to
something
start
that
with
they
that.
need
Yeah,
to
yeah, exactly.
maybe make it clear that you can talk to an attorney before you push the button to submit
Yeah,
everything. Make sure you're in the right business. Do you want to be an LLC? Do you want to be a C corp? Do you want to elect S corp taxation status? Maybe understanding the differences between single member and multi-member
yeah, yeah.
LLCs. Yeah, that would
A
be
lot of questions like that would be helpful to have just somebody walking through a little bit, I think, before you kind of get into the process. But what tools and systems have helped you keep your business running smoothly?
So we use legal management software that has been fantastic. We actually adopted two suites. We've got Clio and Faster Suite that
Wow.
we use.
I hear a
Uh,
lot of people using Clio.
yeah, I really like it. It's from where I came from. So I came into this firm. They had systems in place, but they're still using paper filing systems and things. And so there's kind of these old school processes that we have been working out of over the last 7, 8 years. And Clio is a huge leap for that, in terms of just being able to have everything in one place instead of multiple systems.
Yeah.
Better time tracking, which unfortunately in the attorney world, billing by the minute. I mean, we
Yeah.
we have to bill in 6-minute blocks, and unless we have an agreement to do otherwise, and so that's unfortunate. I actually really hate the billable hour model and what it's done to the legal profession, but that's kind of the default. So,
No flat fees typically, or do you do very many things with flat fees?
so I do almost all my work with flat
Oh,
rates.
okay. Okay.
So that actually was when I was in law school. My capstone research was on alternative billing models and the ethical rules and constraints around them. Attorneys, again, I've mentioned the ethical rules. We have very stringent ethical rules to govern each other. And part of it is because, when an attorney goes rogue, everybody, everybody's heard of the attorney that's dishonest and awful, and we all hate attorneys, and it's because there's very few attorneys,
Yeah.
but when
Few
they
people, few
behave
bad
like that,
seasons.
it's really nasty for the whole rest of the profession. When most of us, are really honest and just trying to help, to some extent. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
attorneys do, is kind of help. My job is to help my clients solve problems. And I love being a problem solver. I'm not a problem creator. So when it comes to the billing practices, where there's decades worth of ethical lawsuits, where attorneys have been sued for unethical billing practices that just really at the end of the day kind of narrowed us down into, you have to charge, you have to be able to show what you did, by the minute, this, like we can't bill in 15-minute blocks. That's too much. That's too vague. We have to, tenth of an hour, 6-minute blocks, are kind of the standard now. So, and that all comes from case law before. But the good news is the rules do allow us to have alternative billing methods. The most common one is contingency fee cases. You see those mostly in personal injury cases. And really, what that's doing is, from my perspective and what I found, again, coming from a business background and doing the research, even without saying it this way, what the legal profession did is they ended up with contingency cases on one side where the client bears none of the risk for the fees in the case, and the attorney bears the risk. All the way to the billable hour, where the attorney bill has no risk, really. Maybe a little bit of risk that your client won't pay, but usually we request retainers and stuff to mitigate that. So on the billable hour, the client bears 100% of the risk that this is going to take a long time, or versus a little time. On the contingency case, the attorney bears that risk. Is this going to take a lot of work or a little bit of work? So we have these two billing things on the end of the spectrum that have been accepted in the legal community for decades now, and very little in the middle, and very little acknowledgement that that's really what's going on in fee shifting, is you're actually shifting risk. And so with flat rates, what I like about flat rates is I can do a flat rate as long as it's clear. It has to be, rationally related to the time it's going to take. But I'm allowed to come to my flat rates based off my historics. And I can set that rate where I can say, okay, I know this usually costs about this. And so, or traditionally, this is how long it's taken me. This is my billable hour rate. So I can charge X amount for a flat rate. And what clients like about that is they know what they're paying. Yeah. There's no risk that I'm going to take a really long time, that they know what they're getting.
Yeah, kind of good for both ends. Does it allow you to get a little bit more scale?
Yeah, well, and it does. And so, like I found in my practice, again, I can say, hey, I'm going to charge you X amount of dollars for this kind of contract. I'm going to charge you X amount for this kind of contract. And then I'll tell people too, I'm like, if you come back and, with massive revisions, more than twice, like we're up in the cost here, because what it means is you didn't tell me what you really wanted in the first place. But I've almost never, I've only had that happen maybe twice in 5 years, where someone just kept coming back and back and back with the contract because they just kept making changes. But it's great. My clients love it. It makes them happy. My flat rates are competitive. I know some practitioners charge kind of higher end rates, or again, go hourly. And so they'll give you a range. Well, it'll probably be around this much, but you really have no idea until you're done.
Yeah.
Whereas I can say, nope, this is what I charge and we're done. And this is what it includes. And then for my part, then if I can be more efficient, I get to keep that gain. I don't have to discount it because I was efficient.
Exactly.
Or because I adopted software, right? So that's the whole point. It's like, why would I adopt AI? Why would I adopt legal software? If at the end of the day, I've got so many minutes in the day that I can bill and that's it. And it will never be more and never be like, why would I adopt all these things? I might as well just write out contracts by hand, right? I mean, that's oversimplifying a little bit. We do have a duty to try to be efficient for clients. But actually, in the long run, what it's done is I've been able to be more efficient. I've been able to keep my rates really competitive for what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good that you've been able to find some scale like that, and it helps your clients as well. Let's talk just about
it takes some stress off too, where I don't have to worry as much about did I grab every 6 minute,
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
I still track just in terms of data collection and trending and stuff like that, but it does take some of that stress off and makes it better.
Good. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about just how like the impact of being a business owner for you. How has running and owning a business changed your life?
Well, it's been astronomically different. I mean, I get to set my own schedule. When I was working as a business owner before law school, it was a very creative endeavor. But everything's on me, right? As the business owner. So there's definitely a lot of responsibility, but honestly, I can't say there's anything that's quite as fulfilling, except maybe being a parent, than building something. I mean, and that's you get to build it from scratch. It gets to be part of you. I mean, in some ways, it becomes like a kid. Like you put a lot of effort into it. And there's trial and error, right? Like it's highs and lows. You could have a project go bad. You could have suppliers send you crap product that ends up costing you, and you got to learn and you got to pivot along the way. But at the end of the day, it's very freeing to be your own boss. Now I'm a partner in my law firm, so I'm one of the owners, and we've got staff that we're looking out for, taking care of. We've got the business growth needs. We've had succession planning concerns as we've transitioned older attorneys out of the firm, and we, making it through COVID, what was an issue. And so all of those things, I'm not going to say it's not stressful. I mean, it's 100%. It is stressful, but at the end of the day, at least for me, where I'm at, I get to control my own schedule. I get to be at all my kids' activities and sports things.
Yeah,
I get
you don't have to ask for permission
No,
anymore.
I don't. I just schedule, put them on the calendar, and block my time out. Say I'm not there. Now I am responsible to my partners to make sure that I'm still bringing in enough for my fair share. Make sure our overhead is taken care of. Make sure that my assistant, has the support that she needs, and everybody else. I love our staff that we have. We actually worked really hard to make sure that our law firm would transition from the older attorneys leaving over the last 5 years, just partially because we love our staff, and didn't want to have to see everybody go or whatever. So it's always a learning. I think if you reach a point in your life where you think you know everything, and you've got it all figured out, that maybe you're being blind to something that's going to, come hit you in the knees a little bit. Sometimes it's things that we do ignorantly, and sometimes it's something like COVID where we have no control over it at all. And I've got, some great stories of clients and coworkers who were able to pivot in dark times and make something work. And then we all know there were a lot of people who got dragged under, and sometimes it's through no fault of your own. So, I mean, that's where I look at lifestyle. Like, if you can accept the risk of being a business owner and the responsibility, it is very freeing. If you're very risk adverse and you want the security of a paycheck and someone who's going to tell you what to do, um, being a business owner is not for everybody.
Yeah.
But it is scary. I mean, the way I think about it, like, I have lots and lots of clients. So if I have a client fire me, I can go get more clients, right? And if I'm super busy, I can scale back on my marketing and not worry about it. And if I need clients, I go start making phone calls and go start taking other accountants out to lunch or something like that. There's always things that I can do. So,
Mm.
if I have a client fire me, it's not the end of my world. Whereas,
Yeah.
if my husband's employer fired him, it would be
No.
catastrophic.
Yeah.
So,
Would you ever go back to being employed again?
no, I don't. I mean, I don't think I could see a scenario where I'd want to do that.
What would you say to somebody considering going into the legal field, kind of like you were at when you decided to make that change?
Do your homework. Make sure that you're understanding the financial and time commitment, but then take a deep breath, jump in, and enjoy the journey, because law is one of those fields where it is everywhere. Like I said, it's that web that kind of brings not only just business, but society together. And a law degree is super marketable. Even if you decide you don't want to be a practicing attorney, there's lots of career opportunities, lots of entrepreneurship opportunities out there. And especially if you're thinking about it as like a second career, being able to basically speak two languages. So, like, law is a language, right? And so I come into law speaking business. And so I understand what business people want when they're asking questions. I understand, generally speaking, business people are very risk tolerant, and they want to try things, they want to do things, they want to get to yes. Attorneys by nature stereotypically tend to be more risk adverse. We look to precedent. That's what we're trained to do, is kind of look backwards instead of forwards. And so I think that's one of the reasons my clients really like me, is I can look at it and say, let's figure out how to get you to yes. Like, yeah, and that's one of the biggest complaints I hear, is that when people talk to attorneys, it's always no, 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 you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And so when you can come into law from from another career field, it gives you the ability to speak two languages, which now means you can step in and be a really fantastic counsel if you do want to be an attorney. Or, I know people that have come to law from medical that then don't end up practicing law, but they end up sitting somewhere in that space where speaking the two languages makes them really lucrative, and desirable, in terms of
Yeah.
consulting. I've seen software developers, engineers, everyone, every field, kind of come in. And if you're coming in from an earlier career, generally speaking, you naturally will see, oh, this is where this fits. This is where I can be
Sense.
useful. But law, like medicine, I mean, there's a huge difference between being a heart surgeon and being an eye doctor and a foot doctor and a whatever. I didn't even understand that till I was actually in law school. I just thought lawyers were lawyers, but we're not.
So many different
Yeah,
fields.
there's different paths. If you find an attorney who says they do everything, that means they do everything a little bit, but maybe not something well. We have a broad understanding of a lot of things, but like, I don't do personal injury, I don't do criminal, I don't do family law. I know enough about them to know kind of where they hit my fields,
Yeah.
and I know enough about them to know that if I see some of these red flags coming, I say, I'm going to get you in touch with my partner who does this, because that's a problem. Um,
Now, I know, you've talked a little bit about the type of law you do, but is there anyone in particular that's like a really good fit for you that, should come and talk to you? Just,
so if you, I like to work with people who are ready to start a business, understand it's going to cost them money. I do sometimes consult with people who realize, I want to start this business, but they don't want to invest in doing it right. And to some extent, LegalZoom has kind of broadened what people can do. They've made it a little bit more affordable for people to start businesses and get the documents, so like their governing documents. Again, they're not going to tell you what you should be doing. They're not going to tell you what's the best fit. They're not going to tell you, the nuances of, hey, I'm in 2 states. How does that work? But if you're serious about starting a business and you want to do it right, I'd love to work with you. If you have an existing business and you want counsel on maybe you want to update some of your processes and procedures, or get some of your documents in line. Maybe you've got things that have been oral agreements for years and you're ready to kind of take it to the next level and invest in that. I'm happy to talk with you and help you with that. It's important to remember that sometimes legal work is something that you pay for that you don't actually see how it affects you, because it's really more like building a wall, right? Like we build retaining walls so that when the floods come, the mud doesn't wash away, right? We draft these legal documents that I would say 9 times out of 10, maybe you don't need. Or I'm not, no, you need, but maybe like they never get challenged, kind of thing. But when something happens, when you get a disgruntled employee, when you end up with, a downturn in the market, COVID, accident, things like that, you need to have things in place so that you don't get sued. And so it's kind of a protective, it's a defensive, a lot of legal is defensive in nature. And if you're ready for that, I'd love to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, you'll talk to Kim. She's been super helpful for me, and I know she'll help any other business owners just as much, if not more. Where can somebody go to get in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
So my law firm is Hopkins Rodin in Idaho Falls, so you can find us at hopkinsrodin.com. You can give us a call. Our office line is 208-523-4445. And you can request an appointment or a consultation call, and we're happy to help you from there. You can find me, I think my bio's linked on our website and on LegalZoom. If you're a LegalZoom customer, you can find me there and schedule an appointment through LegalZoom system. And that's kind of it.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Kim. It's good to learn a little bit about the in the weeds aspects of your business and hear about your journey and successes. And really appreciate your time and coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the BizGrowMojo podcast with Ryan Amon. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the BizGrowMojo podcast.